Hey guys, in this video, I want to share with you some mistakes on the interior detailing process to avoid, because if you don't, you will damage things, and if you've not experienced some of these things, you might be totally unaware of them. The very first thing I want you guys to notice that I'm doing in this video is all of the windows are rolled down. The reason for this is because when you're detailing a car like this that smells, it's nasty, the previous owner obviously did not take care of it, what's inevitably going to happen is if I can't just spray chemical directly onto the door panels, directly onto the seats, directly onto the carpet without really worrying about what's around me, it's going to take me forever, right? There's not always this convenient little scenario in the detailing world, in the real world, where you can spray your cleaner on your applicator, or spray it on your brush first, or spray it on your towel first. Sometimes you just got to overload and spray it on the panel and start scrubbing. If you do not roll down the windows, especially in a car like this that has tint on the windows and it's older and everything in this car is damaged, you are going to spray a chemical on that tint. It is going to eat into it, stain it, look terrible. It is definitely going to be noticeable, and you're not going to be able to get it off. Roll down the windows before you start anything else. Now, just a quick interruption announcement in this video. If you are a detailing entrepreneur and you've either started your business and you want to grow, or you have never started and you want to get the playbook on how to scale to six figures through detailing, I am hosting a live event on April 4th. The registration just opened up and it's totally free. The link is in the YouTube description box below. For those of you who are interested, stop now, click that link and get all of that information and secure your spot. Now, let me jump to the next thing to avoid when you're doing an interior detail like this. The first thing you have to make sure you get right is the chemical that you are using. You guys know I talk a lot about P&S Interior Express Cleaner. The reason for that is because when you're giving general advice on YouTube, you kind of think about the things you're saying and you think, I gotta make sure I'm using a chemical that people can basically not screw up. So I want to be very clear. I use a lot of chemicals and a lot of different chemicals than just P&S Interior Express Cleaner on interiors. However, P&S Interior Express Cleaner is very hard to screw up because it is actually a very good cleaner, but it's also very gentle. So it's not the strongest thing out there, and using it on an interior like this will definitely cause you to spend more time on the interior because you are inevitably going to have to go back over things. But I will say you're going to avoid problems with that chemical when diluted around 1:1, or maybe even a little more dilution. You're going to avoid problems like, number one, wiping off the white lettering on those little black window buttons or on the buttons around the steering wheel. Number two, you're not going to get that white chalky residue that often happens from stronger alkaline cleaners even when they're heavily diluted, like Meguiar's all-purpose cleaner. And this is particularly prevalent on cars like this that you see me detailing now, that are old, that are damaged, the interiors suck, and you're trying to clean them best you can, and then all of a sudden you get this white chalky residue that you don't know how to fix. You're going to avoid problems like that when you are using something like P&S Interior Express Cleaner, which is why I think it is so important to use something like that. What should you not be using on interiors like this? My primary piece of wisdom here is just to avoid really strong degreasers, number one. So I wouldn't use anything that's kind of like even labeled a degreaser, because they tend to be relatively caustic, and they do tend to, even when diluted, they tend to be really aggressive in terms of what they can do to the actual surface that you're cleaning. So I would reserve cars like this only for all-purpose cleaners, and then inside of that, I would take advice from people like myself who have damaged a lot of different pieces over the years and figured out what does it and what doesn't do it, and I would just default to the Interior Express Cleaner, or the cleaner that we know is not going to screw something up, even if it takes a little bit more time. Now, moving on to the third thing that is really easy to damage in a vehicle like this. Even when you're using the right chemical and you've got the windows rolled down and you're being cautious, the bottom line is that on an interior like this, especially a tan interior like this, and you can see me digging in with my toothbrush here, but what's going to happen is, I call it a thin layer of grease and grime, a thin film that basically gets laid over the entire interior, that doesn't just come off from you spraying chemical on there and then wiping it off with a microfiber towel. So if you run this type of car through just kind of a general worker bee detailer business, they're just going to wipe it down and throw some silicone dressing on top of it, and it's going to look awful, and it's not going to look detailed at all. The issue is that if you start cleaning, for example, a door panel like this, and you do one part a little bit more aggressive and the other part a little bit less aggressive, you're going to see you pulled that film off of one area, but you can still see it on the other area. And the way that it shows up is that there's a darker appearance on the left and a lighter appearance on the right. The lighter appearance on the right, where you were a little bit more aggressive, is actually the original color of the door panel. It's very common on leathers, plastics, rubbers, vinyls, and I call these the general hard shell surface areas of the vehicle. This includes dashboards, consoles, door panels, sometimes leather seats, rubber vinyl areas that line the body of the car and separate the inside from the outside. All of those areas are areas where you have to be concerned about something like this. Generally speaking, here's my piece of advice. I either use a non-abrasive scrub pad or I use a magic eraser very lightly. You can see that I've used both in this scenario, but even when I use a magic eraser, I make sure that I'm only using it on the hard plastic areas. I don't necessarily take it to leather areas of a car like this. And essentially what I'm doing is working myself down down the door panel and I'm using my steamer to rinse tight areas and to make sure that I pulled off all of that film. What I'm also doing in this particular vehicle is an odor removal. And so when we do an odor removal, we have to make sure that we have completely detailed every area out possible, or that odor can quickly come back or still exist after the detail, no matter how many hours we do an ozone treatment, let it sit in the sun, or how well we detailed other areas. Now I'm jumping to the radio button kind of console area because this is the next area where it's really easy to damage things. And there's not all that many areas of the interior where you can really hurt things, right? But in the carpet, I would say, you know, carpet, leather seats, upholstery, those tend to be areas that are a little bit easier to deal with, right? Sometimes you can't figure out how to get them the way you want them to, but it's not quite so easy to damage those areas. And this is an area that is very easy to damage on an older vehicle, not least of which is because there tends to be a lot of damage in this area before you ever start. And I want to be clear about what this tends to be. A lot of times, let's pretend like there's some like cup holders that, right, they retract into that area and you can pull them out. That area tends to be an area that gets damaged. You'll pull out that little cup holder sliding area and you yank it out thinking that you broke it because all of a sudden the cup holder, you know, little rings don't come out like they should, or they're broken inside, or the plastic is cracked, and you're thinking, oh, wait a second, did I just do that because I yanked that out so fast because I was in the flow of detailing? And the answer is no. That's an area that's been pushed in and pulled out for the last 15, 20 years. And because of that, those types of things are what tend to become damaged over time, right? Or you might be using a detail brush on the radio console area like you see me doing right here, and all of a sudden the cassette player little door gets pushed in and it won't come back down. It kind of got stuck, flipped up. And so again, I'm just naming things that tend to happen, and this is just from my own experience on vehicles this age. Basically, what I do to avoid this is I have an actual checklist of commonly damaged areas on older vehicles that are not detailed that I will always go through. I call it the flow before I ever start detailing. So on this particular vehicle, before I ever started detailing, I went through, I literally take my hand and I'll just run it over this area to see, is there anything I can feel, see, or any malfunction happening? Because what happens is, if there is, I will take a picture of that area. That picture is time stamped. The customer knows that that time that picture was taken was before I actually started the detail. Now I have actually saved myself some reputation or potential liability problems because I've got a picture that is time stamped and sent to the customer of the damaged area before I ever started detailing, right? So when you get accustomed to what some of these areas are, you can actually start to do that and it becomes really, really easy. The next thing I want to highlight about this area, because this is kind of the hyper, let's just say cautious area in my details when I'm dealing with a car this age, is number one, the only time you'll ever see me using a steamer is if I am using it in what you see here, which is really like the coin, you know, change holder, the cigarette ash holder. And for those of you who are too young to remember, we actually did have cars that you could smoke in conveniently, not really that long ago, kind of like we had smoking sections of restaurants. And so those are the areas where I will remove it. I'll use my steamer because there's nothing to damage there. But am I ever going to take my steamer to the actual radio buttons? No, I'm not on a car like this. I'm going to be very light with my detailing brush. I'm going to spray just a little bit of chemical of my P&S Interior Express cleaner and I'm going to move on. The reason why I'm so light in this area is because number one, those electrical components are very easy to damage. Number two, the white lettering on those buttons are very easy to wipe off. Number three, this area, the plastic is cheap and it's lasted a long time. If you are too aggressive, you can push a button in and it won't get pushed out. You can put the little cassette door up and it won't come back down. And lastly, of course, I never spray chemical directly onto this area. I'm always putting it on my applicator first and then applying it. A lot of times, think about it, you're driving a car, it's been 20 years, there's lots of vibrations on the road, lots of braking, accelerating, things shake inside of a car, right? Because of that, things loosen. It's very easy and it's very common. If you were to ever spray chemical or a steamer directly onto this area, you can start getting vapor or liquid behind those screens and there is no going back when you do that. So these are just some very simple checklist items you can start to use in your interior detailing process when you're dealing with older vehicles, because that tends to be where the problem occurs in the first place. Guys, once again, if you want to register for the live event I'm hosting on April 4th because you're ready for the business playbook to actually start to scale your business, or to just start from the right place from the beginning, getting customers to come to you, not running a bunch of paid ads and not overspending on stuff you don't need, make sure to register with the link in the YouTube description box below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. All of the tools and products will be linked up in the YouTube description box as well. And remember, from Luke here at Wilson Auto Detailing, a great detailer is always learning, and I will see you guys in the next video.